His affection for her grew with each passing day. He found himself thinking about her smile, her laugh, and the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her love for nature. He knew he had to take a chance. He invited her to dinner, not at some lavish, exclusive restaurant, but at a quiet, unpretentious spot by the lagoon. It was there, under the moonlight, that he confessed his love. "Hello, bestie. Please stay with me as I unfold this interesting romantic story. If you enjoy the story, please support us by subscribing to this channel and hit the notification button for more. Thank you. Grab your popcorn, sit back, relax, and enjoy this story." Alhaji Abubakar Musa, a man whose name was synonymous with wealth and power, felt a profound emptiness in his otherwise gilded life. His days were a blur of high-stakes meetings, international travel, and the relentless pursuit of expansion for his sprawling empire. He owned real estate across 3 continents and held significant stakes in Nigeria's oil and technology sectors. Yet his greatest source of pride, and sometimes his loneliest space, was the Grand Galleria. The mall was a marvel of modern architecture in the heart of Lagos, a place where polished marble floors reflected the dazzling light of imported chandeliers, and the air was perfumed with the scent of luxury. It was a world of his making, a testament to his ambition. But on this particular Tuesday afternoon, as he conducted one of his rare, unannounced inspections, the opulence felt hollow. He was surrounded by his creations, but disconnected from the people who brought them to life. As he walked past the high-end boutiques, his eyes fell upon a small, charming floral shop tucked away in a corner. His pace slowed. Inside, a young woman was completely absorbed in her work. Her name, he would later learn, was Amarachi. She was meticulously arranging a bouquet of fiery red lilies, her brow furrowed in concentration, her fingers moving with a dancer's grace. She wasn't just putting flowers in a vase. She was crafting a story, a symphony of color and form. Unlike the store managers and security guards who would immediately straighten up and offer him deferential greetings, Amarachi seemed utterly oblivious to his presence. She was lost in her own world of petals and stems, a world that was simple, beautiful, and authentic. He watched as she tied a final ribbon with a delicate flourish, a soft, genuine smile gracing her lips as she stepped back to admire her handiwork. In that moment, amidst the overwhelming grandeur of his mall, Alhaji Abubakar Musa, a man who could acquire anything with a single command, found himself captivated by something he couldn't buy. He was drawn not to her beauty, though she was beautiful, but to the pure, unadulterated passion she held for her craft. Her focus, her quiet confidence, and her lack of pretense were a refreshing contrast to the calculated and often superficial world he inhabited. He felt a spark of curiosity, a longing to know the woman behind the red lilies, a woman who had, in a fleeting moment, made his vast, empty world feel a little less lonely. The floral shop became Alhaji Abubakar Musa's newest destination. He no longer saw his visits as routine inspections but as an excuse to see her. His first order was a simple arrangement for his office, a bouquet of deep red lilies, the very flowers that had captured his attention. When he arrived to pick them up, he found Amarachi carefully wrapping the stems, her movements as graceful as ever. "These are magnificent," he said, the words feeling a little clumsy on his tongue. He was used to commanding boardrooms, not complimenting a florist. Amarachi looked up, her eyes widening slightly in recognition. "Thank you, sir. The red lily symbolizes passion and love, a perfect fit for a powerful space." She smiled, a soft, genuine curve of her lips that made his chest tighten just a bit. Her response was insightful, and he found himself lingering, asking her about the different flowers and their meanings. She spoke with a quiet confidence, sharing her knowledge of roses, orchids, and daisies, her voice a melodic counterpoint to the city's ceaseless hum outside. He learned that she hadn't always been a florist. She had studied botany in university, but her passion for hands-on work had led her to open her own small shop. As the weeks turned into months, his visits became more frequent and his orders more elaborate. He'd order stunning arrangements for his various properties, always making sure to be there when Amarachi was working. Their conversations moved beyond flowers. He told her about his love for his hometown of Kano, about the humble beginnings of his empire, and the loneliness that often accompanied his success. In turn, she shared her dreams of expanding her shop, of creating a community garden for children, and her simple joys in life. She treated him not as Alhaji Musa, the billionaire, but as Abubakar, a man with a genuine interest in her. With her, he could shed the heavy mantle of his public persona and just be himself. He discovered a world beyond balance sheets and stock market trends, a world filled with the simple beauty of a sunflower and the profound joy of a heartfelt conversation. He found himself thinking about her smile, her laugh, and the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her love for nature. He realized that the emptiness he had felt wasn't due to a lack of wealth or success, but a lack of connection. And with Amarachi, he was finally beginning to feel connected. The line between a business acquaintance and a genuine friendship had blurred, then dissolved entirely. Abubakar no longer needed a pretext of ordering flowers to see Amarachi. He would simply arrive at her shop, pull up a chair, and listen as she worked, their conversations flowing as easily as the Lagos Lagoon on a calm evening. But lately, a new feeling had begun to simmer beneath the surface of their easy companionship, a potent mix of anticipation and longing. He found himself dressing with a little more care before his visits, a fact his longtime driver, Emeka, had noticed with a knowing smile. His mind, once a fortress of business strategies, was now filled with thoughts of her smile, the way her eyes would crinkle at the corners when she laughed, and the quiet passion she brought to everything she did. The emptiness he had felt for so long was slowly being filled, not by wealth, but by the promise of something real. One balmy Friday evening, as Amarachi was closing her shop, Abubakar found himself standing at the entrance, his heart pounding with a nervousness he hadn't felt since his first major business deal. He cleared his throat. Amarachi, he began, his voice deeper than usual. I was wondering if you would have dinner with me tonight. He held his breath, the weight of the moment pressing in on him. This wasn't a business dinner. This was a confession. Amarachi's hands, which had been deftly locking the front door, stilled. She looked at him, her expression a mix of surprise and a dawning recognition. The air between them crackled with an unspoken tension. Dinner? She asked softly, as if to confirm she'd heard correctly. Yes, he replied, taking a step closer. Not at some exclusive, stuffy place. I know a small, quiet spot by the lagoon. Unpretentious. Just us. 1,000 thoughts raced through Amarachi's mind. She had felt the shift in their relationship, the growing intensity of his gaze, the deeper meaning behind his words. She had felt it too, a pull toward this powerful yet surprisingly humble man. But the chasm between their worlds was vast. He was the owner of the very mall she worked in, a man whose name was a byword for opulence. She was a simple florist. Seeing the flicker of hesitation in her eyes, Abubakar pressed on, his voice earnest. Amarachi, I'm not asking you out as Alhaji Musa, the billionaire. I'm asking you out as Abubakar, the man you've come to know. Her heart fluttered. She saw the sincerity in his eyes, a vulnerability that was a stark contrast to his public image. A smile, shy but genuine, bloomed on her face. Okay, she said, the single word feeling like a monumental decision. I'd like that, Abubakar. Later that evening, as they sat at a quiet table with the gentle breeze from the lagoon carrying the scent of salt and city life, Abubakar confessed his love. He spoke of the emptiness he had felt, and how she had filled it with light and laughter. He didn't speak of riches or power, but of the simple, profound joy she brought to his life. Amarachi, her hand resting in his, felt a warmth spread through her. The fear of their different worlds was still there, a whisper in the back of her mind, but it was being drowned out by the powerful, undeniable truth of his words. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that their two different worlds could, somehow, become one. The news of their relationship spread through Lagos like wildfire. It began as a hushed rumor among the Grand Galleria's staff, a mix of awe and disbelief that a woman from the flower shop could capture the heart of the great Alhaji Musa. Soon, it filtered out to the city's high society, where it was met with a different kind of curiosity, a sharp, almost predatory interest. Amarachi, once anonymous and content in her small corner of the world, was suddenly a subject of intense public scrutiny. The paparazzi, smelling a sensational story, began to frequent the mall, snapping photos of her as she worked, her every move now a potential headline. The social media landscape, a world she had largely ignored, was now a minefield of speculation. Articles with headlines like "Billionaire's New Muse," "The Florist from the Mall, and Is She the One or Just a Phase?" popped up everywhere. Within her own workplace, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Some of her colleagues, mostly from other stores, now treated her with a forced deference that felt colder than outright hostility. They would stop their conversations the moment she walked by, their eyes following her with a mix of jealousy and judgment. A few of the younger employees, particularly those who had once vied for Alhaji Musa's attention, made snide remarks just loud enough for her to hear. "She's just a gold digger," one whispered loudly to her friend as Amarachi passed. "It won't last." But the real drama began when she was introduced to Abubakar's social circle. At a gala held at his exclusive Lagos estate, she was a beautiful, but uncomfortable, centerpiece. The women, dripping in diamonds and designer clothes, smiled politely while their eyes dissected her simple, elegant dress and her every gesture. Their questions, masked as polite inquiries, were thinly veiled jabs at her background. "So, you work with flowers?" one socialite asked, a cool glint in her eyes. "How quaint. I suppose you'll be giving it up now?" Another, a longtime family friend, was more direct. "Our Abubakar is a very generous man. He's always had a soft spot for projects. We just hope you understand the difference between being a project and being a wife." Each encounter was a fresh cut, a reminder of the chasm that separated their worlds. Amarachi, a woman of quiet dignity and grace, found herself having to constantly defend her character without ever saying a word. She saw the pain in Abubakar's eyes as he watched her endure the scrutiny. He would constantly reassure her, his hand gently on her back, his voice a steadying presence in the whirlwind of judgment. But she knew that their love, once a private and sacred thing, was now on trial, and the jury was the entire city of Lagos. The family opposition, though anticipated, was far more formidable than either Abubakar or Amarachi had imagined. At the forefront of this resistance was Abubakar's elder sister, Fatima. A formidable businesswoman in her own right and a fierce protector of the family name, she saw Amarachi not as a woman her brother loved, but as a potential threat to their dynasty. The idea of a simple florist, a woman from outside their elite circle, marrying into their family was, to Fatima, an insult and a risk. Fatima decided to take matters into her own hands. She arranged a meeting with Amarachi, sending a formal invitation to the Grand Galleria flower shop. The card was embossed with the Musa family crest, a stark reminder of the world Amarachi was being asked to enter. The meeting was to be at a high-end, exclusive restaurant, a place Amarachi had only ever seen in magazines. The atmosphere was designed to intimidate. When Amarachi arrived, Fatima was already seated, a portrait of poise and calculated elegance. She didn't offer a warm greeting. Instead, her gaze was cold and appraising, sweeping over Amarachi's simple attire with a barely perceptible sneer. The conversation that followed was a masterclass in veiled hostility. "Let's be clear, Amarachi," Fatima began, her voice smooth as silk but with an edge of steel. "I love my brother dearly. He is a very generous man with a kind heart. He often takes on projects, causes, and people he believes he can help. But this is different. This is his life." Amarachi sat up straighter, her hands clasped in her lap. "I understand, ma'am," she said calmly, her voice steady despite the trembling in her stomach. "I love Abubakar, not his wealth." Fatima let out a short, humorless laugh. "Sweet words, but actions speak louder. You see, a woman in our family must be a pillar, not a dependent. She must have her own standing, her own worth. My brother's marriage is a merger, a consolidation of power, not fairy tale." The conversation continued with Fatima listing the duties of a Musa wife, attending charity galas, running foundations, networking with foreign dignitaries. She painted a picture of a life Amarachi was entirely unprepared for. Finally, Fatima laid down her ultimatum. "I have a business proposition for you," she said, leaning forward. "A very generous one. I'll buy your little shop, set you up with a significant sum to start a new life elsewhere. Away from Lagos, away from my brother. It would be a fresh start and you could live very comfortably." The offer was a poisoned chalice. It was a direct attack on Amarachi's character, an accusation that her love was for sale. A lesser person might have taken the deal, a tempting escape from the intense pressure. But Amarachi's love for Abubakar was real, and it was not a currency to be bartered. "With all due respect, ma'am," Amarachi replied, her voice gaining strength, "my shop isn't for sale, and neither is my love for your brother. I am not a project. I'm a partner. You'll find that I am worthy of his love, and I will be a pillar for him, just as you say a wife should be." With that, Amarachi stood up, thanked Fatima for the lunch, and walked away. The victory was hers, but she knew this was only the first battle in a long, difficult war for her place in Abubakar's life and family. She had passed a crucial test, proving her integrity and strength, but she knew that Fatima's opposition had only just begun. Amarachi's defiant meeting with Fatima had a profound effect on Abubakar. When she recounted the encounter, not with anger but with a quiet, steely resolve, his admiration for her sword, her courage and unwavering loyalty in the face of his sister's calculated hostility solidified his conviction. This was not just a woman he loved. This was a partner he needed by his side. The fear of their disparate worlds now seemed insignificant against the strength of her character. He knew with an absolute certainty that he wanted to spend the rest of his life with her. His plan for the proposal was unlike anything his friends or family would have expected. He bypassed the traditional grand gestures of their social class. No elaborate public declarations, no televised events. Instead, he chose a setting that was personal and meaningful to them, the Grand Galleria itself, but after closing hours. One evening, he called Amarachi and asked her to meet him at the mall. The place was eerily quiet. The luxury shops shuttered, the marble floors reflecting the soft glow of the security lights. The silence was a stark contrast to the usual midday bustle, and it lent a sense of intimacy to the vast space. As Amarachi walked toward her flower shop, she saw him standing there, not in a business suit, but in a simple, casual shirt, his posture relaxed. He met her with a smile and took her hand. "Amarachi," he began, his voice soft but filled with emotion. "This place, it's where I built my empire. It's a symbol of my ambition and my success. But until I met you, it was just a building. It was empty." He led her inside her own shop, which was lit only by the faint glow of the refrigerated flower cases. The air was filled with the familiar, sweet scent of her work. He knelt before her, not on a red carpet, but on the polished floor of her shop. In his hand was a simple, elegant ring with a single, perfectly cut diamond, a testament to his love's purity, not its price. "Amarachi, you filled my world with color and life," he said, his gaze unwavering. "You showed me that true wealth isn't in what I own, but in who I am with. I want to build a new empire with you, one not of buildings and businesses, but of love, family, and shared dreams. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in Amarachi's eyes. This was not the fairy tale she had read about, but a story that was uniquely theirs. He wasn't offering her a life of gilded cages and suffocating expectations. He was promising her a partnership, a life of love and respect. Overwhelmed with emotion, she could only nod, a radiant smile breaking through her tears. "Yes, Abubakar," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, I will marry you." He rose, placed the ring on her finger, and pulled her into a tender embrace. The Grand Galleria, once a monument to his wealth, had become the hallowed ground where their forever began, their love a beacon in the quiet, empty halls. The world might have seen their union as a billionaire's folly, but in that moment, under the soft glow of the flower shop, They knew it was the most real and right thing either of them had ever done. The engagement announcement, published in all of Nigeria's major newspapers, was an earthquake that rattled the very foundations of the Musa family. While the public was abuzz with a mix of romance and gossip, the inner sanctum of the Musa household was in a state of civil war. The opposition, once led by Fatima, now had a formidable new general, Abubakar's older brother, Idris. Idris, a shrewd and calculating man who had always viewed their family's legacy as a business, saw Abubakar's impending marriage to Amarachi as a reckless and dangerous emotional decision. To him, a wife was a strategic asset, a means to consolidate wealth, power, and political influence. He and Fatima, once rivals for their father's favor, now found common ground in their disdain for Amarachi. They saw her as a beautiful but simple girl who could never truly be a part of their world, and worse, a vulnerability their rivals could exploit. Their strategy was methodical and insidious. They began by sowing seeds of doubt among Abubakar's business partners and close friends. Idris would host lavish dinners and drop casual, but loaded comments. "Abubakar is a bit distracted these days," he'd say with a knowing smile. "His heart seems to be more in the flower business than in the oil fields." Fatima, with her sharp wit and social influence, worked the women's circles. She would hint at Amarachi's unsuitable background and lack of a proper dowry, painting a picture of a woman who was marrying for money, not love. The most public display of their disapproval came during a family dinner. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and every word was a potential landmine. Fatima started the attack, critiquing Amarachi's choice of attire and her quiet demeanor at the table. "You must learn to be more assertive, Amarachi," she said with a sugary smile. "A Musa wife is not a wallflower." Idris, however, was far more direct. He began to question Amarachi about her family's background, her education, and her financial standing before she met Abubakar. His questions were not born of curiosity, but of a desire to expose her perceived deficiencies. "We have a certain standing to maintain," he said, his eyes hard and cold. "Marrying a woman with no social connections could be seen as a sign of weakness." Abubakar, who had been listening with a growing fury, finally reached his breaking point. He slammed his hand on the table, the sound echoing through the tense silence. "Enough," he commanded, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "Amarachi is to be my wife. Her worth is not measured by her family name or her bank account. It is measured by her heart, her character, and the love she has for me. And in those things she is richer than any of us." The room fell silent. Abubakar had drawn a line in the sand. He had chosen Amarachi over his family's traditions and their suffocating expectations. The feud was no longer a cold war of whispers and rumors. It was now a very public and bitter battle for the soul of the Musa family, with Amarachi at its very center. The wedding day was a spectacle of opulence and tradition, a perfect blend of modern luxury and ancient customs. Lagos's elite gathered under the magnificent canopy of a five-star hotel's ballroom, transformed into a garden of white roses and shimmering gold. Amarachi, breathtakingly beautiful in a custom-made gown, walked down the aisle on the arm of her proud, tearful father, her heart aflutter with joy and a nervous anticipation of her new life. Abubakar, looking every bit the handsome groom, watched her approach with a love so profound it seemed to fill the room. But even a day as sacred as this was not immune to the Musa family's internal strife. As the couple exchanged their vows, a murmur began to ripple through the crowd. It started in the back row, among a group of family friends who were allied with Idris and Fatima. The source of the commotion was a woman named Bizi, a well-known socialite and a longtime associate of the Musa family. She had a bitter, triumphant look on her face, and as soon as the vows were concluded, she seized her moment. Just as the officiant was about to declare them husband and wife, Bizi stood up. "Stop," she announced, her voice piercing the sacred silence. All eyes turned to her, and a gasp went through the crowd. "This marriage cannot proceed. The bride is not who she claims to be." The room erupted in whispers. Amarachi's face went pale, her eyes wide with shock and fear. Abubakar, his arms still around her, felt her tremble. He turned to Beezy, his eyes blazing with a cold fury. "Beezy, this is a private family matter. You will sit down," he commanded, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. But Beezy, emboldened by the whispers of Idris and Fatima, who were watching her from their seats, pressed on. "She's a fraud. She manipulated Abubakar with her innocent act. A man of his stature deserves a woman of pedigree, not some common girl from a flower shop who has been with every man she can get her hands on." The accusation hung in the air, a poisonous dart aimed directly at Amarachi's heart. A few people gasped. Others looked on in stunned silence. Amarachi felt a wave of nausea wash over her. The beautiful day, the love she had felt, was all crashing down around her. Before the situation could escalate further, Abubakar stepped forward, his hand still holding Amarachi's tightly. He stood tall, a picture of power and controlled rage. "Beezy," he said, his voice now a booming command that silenced every whisper. "You have just made a grave mistake. You have slandered my wife on our wedding day, in front of God and all our loved ones." He turned his gaze to the crowd, his face unyielding. "My wife's past is her own, and it is a part of her I cherish and respect. If there is a problem with her character, it is because she is marrying me, and you have a problem with that." He then looked directly at Idris and Fatima, a clear message in his eyes. He had known they were behind this. "My wife is a woman of integrity and a person I love deeply. I will not have her or our union disrespected. You will all remember this day, not for the drama, but for the beginning of a new family." With a powerful and final flourish, he turned back to Amarachi, his face softening with love. He lifted her veil, leaned in, and kissed her passionately, a defiant act of love and commitment that left no room for doubt. The crowd, now moved by his unwavering devotion, erupted into a thunderous applause. In that moment, surrounded by cheers and love, Amarachi knew she was not just marrying a man of wealth, but a man of honor who would always be her steadfast protector. The wedding drama, though painful, had a surprising effect. For many of the attendees, Abubakar's powerful defense of Amarachi was a turning point. It wasn't the fiery display of a man defending his pride, but a profound declaration of love and respect. The public narrative shifted from one of a mismatched couple to a story of a modern-day fairy tale. A powerful man choosing love over tradition. But within the Musa family, the rift remained. Amarachi, now officially Mrs. Musa, refused to be cowed by the hostility. She knew that winning over her husband's family, particularly Fatima, was crucial to their long-term happiness. She was not naive. She understood that Fatima's opposition stemmed from a genuine, albeit misguided, desire to protect her brother. Amarachi saw a glimmer of humanity in Fatima's cold exterior, a shared love for Abubakar that they could, perhaps, build upon. A few weeks after the wedding, Amarachi took a bold step. She sent Fatima a handwritten note, not on formal stationery, but on a simple card from her flower shop. It was not an apology, but an invitation for a private meeting at a quiet cafe. Fatima, surprised by the humility of the gesture, agreed to meet. The atmosphere was tense at first. Fatima, still guarded, sat stiffly across from Amarachi. "I don't know what you hope to achieve with this," she said, her voice laced with skepticism. "My mind hasn't changed. I don't expect it to, yet," Amarachi replied, her voice soft but steady. "I just wanted you to see me not as the mall girl or the person you fear is a threat, but as Amarachi. I love your brother, Fatima. Not his money, not his name, but the man who would sit in my shop and talk for hours about his dreams. The man who, on our wedding day, stood up for me when no one else would." Amarachi then shared a personal story from her childhood, a memory of her father teaching her how to tend to a difficult plant. "He told me that some of the most beautiful flowers take the longest to bloom. They need patience, care, and a lot of faith. I know our relationship is like that, Fatima. It will take time, but I am not going anywhere." Fatima listened in silence, her initial hostility slowly giving way to a grudging respect. She saw no pretense in Amarachi's eyes, only sincerity. She saw a quiet strength that mirrored her own, a loyalty to family, or in this case, the family Amarachi was fighting so hard to be a part of. Amarachi's words weren't an attack, but a plea for understanding, a genuine offer of friendship. As the meeting ended, Fatima didn't offer a hug or an apology. Instead, she simply said, "My brother is a very lucky man, Amarachi. Don't disappoint him." It was far from a full acceptance, but for Amarachi it was a victory. It was a crack in the fortress Fatima had built around her heart, a small glimmer of hope that one day, she might truly be a part of her husband's family. Just as Amarachi began to feel a sense of peace, a chilling ghost from her past emerged from the shadows. His name was Chitty, a man she had been engaged to in university. Their relationship had ended abruptly and painfully when she discovered he was deeply in debt from gambling and had been using her to cover his tracks. The heartbreak had been immense, leaving her with a deep-seated fear of betrayal and a cautious approach to love. She had believed she had closed that chapter of her life forever. But Chitty, a man whose pride had been shattered by her rejection, had never truly moved on. He saw her marriage to Abubakar not just as a betrayal, but as a public humiliation. He had been lurking in the periphery, watching her rise from a simple florist to the wife of Nigeria's most powerful billionaire. And now, fueled by a toxic mix of jealousy and bitterness, he decided to re-enter her life. He began with small, unsettling gestures. A single red lily, delivered anonymously to her home, a chilling reminder of the flower shop where her new life began. A text message, sent from an unknown number, simply saying, "Enjoying the good life, Amarachi?" The messages were cryptic, but their meaning was clear to her. He was watching. The suspense, the constant feeling of being monitored, started to wear on her. It brought back all the old anxieties and fears she had worked so hard to overcome. The drama escalated a week later. Chitty managed to get past security at the Grand Galleria, now a place that was both her home and her husband's empire. He cornered her in a quiet hallway, his face a mask of bitter accusation. "You think you've won?" he sneered. "You think you're safe with him? I can ruin you, Amarachi. I can tell him all your secrets. I can tell him about us." Amarachi, shaken but not broken, refused to be intimidated. She stood her ground, her voice a firm command. "Get out of here, Chitty. That part of my life is over. I have nothing to hide from my husband." But Chitty wasn't deterred. "Oh, but you do," he said with a cruel smile. "And if you don't come back to me, I'll make sure the world knows what kind of woman you really are." The threat was clear. He wanted her back, not out of love, but out of a desperate need to reclaim what he felt he had lost. His final, chilling words echoed in her mind. He was going to expose her past. Amarachi knew she had to tell Abubakar the truth before Chitty did. But the old fears crept in, the doubts about whether a man of his stature could ever truly understand or forgive her painful history. The shadow of her past had returned, threatening to destroy the beautiful life she had just begun to build. Chitty, true to his word, made his move. He didn't just contact the media. He went directly to the source of the family's opposition, Idris. He presented Idris with a dossier of half-truths and doctored photos from his past relationship with Amarachi, painting a picture of a woman who was manipulative and opportunistic. The narrative was simple and vicious. Amarachi had a history of pursuing wealthy men, and her engagement to Abubakar was just the latest in a series of calculated moves. Idris, delighted to have ammunition against his brother, wasted no time. He sent the entire package to Abubakar's personal email, ensuring it would reach him without interference. The email was a carefully crafted poison dart, designed to create maximum doubt. It ended with a chilling line, "Ask her yourself. She can't deny the truth." Abubakar was in his office when he read the email. His initial reaction was one of fierce protectiveness. He immediately dismissed the claims as the desperate actions of a jealous rival. But then a subtle shift occurred. The photos, though old, showed an intimacy that he hadn't known about. The details in the text, though twisted, seemed to hint at a past Amarachi had never mentioned. A seed of doubt, cold and sharp, took root in his heart. He went home that evening, the email burning a hole in his mind. The easy companionship they shared was gone, replaced by a suffocating silence. Amarachi, sensitive to his mood, asked what was wrong. Instead of showing her the email, he chose a different, more damaging path. "Is there anything you haven't told me about your past, Amarachi?" he asked, his voice low and devoid of its usual warmth. Amarachi's heart sank. She saw the guarded look in his eyes, the subtle tension in his jaw. She knew this was about Chitty, but she was hurt that Abubakar hadn't come to her with trust and instead had led with suspicion. "I have a past, Abubakar, just like you do," she replied carefully. "Is there something specific you're asking about?" Her evasiveness, a defense mechanism born of shock and hurt, only fueled his doubts. "Specific? How about a man named Chitty? How about a past engagement?" The words were like a series of blows, each one more painful than the last. "Did you ever think to tell me about him? Or were you hoping I'd never find out?" Amarachi was stunned. He had found out not from her, but from someone else. "Abubakar, I was going to tell you," she said, her voice shaking. "He just came back into my life, and I was trying to figure out the best way to. The best way to tell me you were with another man after we were together?" He cut her off, his voice now rising with anger and a deep sense of betrayal. He was not just angry, he was hurt. He felt foolish for having defended her so vehemently, for having believed in her so completely, only to have a part of her life be a complete mystery to him. The argument that followed was a painful clash of two people who, for the first time, were no longer a single unit. Amarachi felt like she was being cross-examined, her love and character on trial. Abubakar, consumed by the lie he felt he had been living, couldn't see past his own pain. The chasm between their worlds, once seemingly bridged by love, had reappeared, and this time, it felt insurmountable. Their love, once so strong, was now being tested by the one thing they couldn't afford to lose: trust. The silence that followed their argument was more deafening than any shout. The opulent living room, usually a sanctuary of their shared happiness, was now a cold, foreign space. Amarachi, her heart aching, saw the deep-seated hurt in Abubakar's eyes and knew that she had to break the silence. She couldn't allow a malicious lie to tear apart the beautiful life they had built. Taking a deep breath, she began to speak, not with anger or defensiveness, but with a raw vulnerability that melted away her pride. "Abubakar, please, let me explain," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "You are right. I had an engagement and his name was Chitty. It was in university a lifetime ago." She then proceeded to tell him everything. The whirlwind romance, his hidden gambling addiction, the betrayal, and the painful breakup that had left her shattered and wary of love. "I didn't tell you because it was a part of my life I had buried," she confessed, tears now streaming down her face. "It was a painful chapter, and I was so scared that if you knew, you would see me differently. I was afraid you would think I was naive or weak. I was going to tell you, Abubakar, but the timing was never right, and then he showed up again and I didn't know how to handle it." She looked at him, her eyes pleading for understanding. "I am so sorry I didn't tell you sooner. But please, believe me when I say that the man in those photos is not the man I am now. My past is part of me, but it doesn't define me. You do. Our love does." Abubakar listened in silence, the initial rage and betrayal slowly receding, replaced by a profound understanding. He saw the genuine fear in her eyes, the pain in her confession. He realized that his anger had been born not of a lack of love, but of a deep-seated fear of losing her. He had reacted like a wounded man, not a trusting partner. He had allowed the whispers of his enemies to blind him to the truth. He walked over to her, knelt down, and gently wiped a tear from her cheek. "I am so sorry, my love," he said, his voice thick with remorse. "I was wrong. I should have trusted you. I let their lies get to me, and I hurt you, the one person I swore to protect." He took her hands in his touch a silent apology. "Your past doesn't matter to me. What matters is now. And all I see is a woman of immense strength and courage, a woman I am privileged to call my wife." In that moment, Their love was forged anew, stronger than ever. The old wound of mistrust was cauterized by the powerful balm of honesty and forgiveness. The chasm that had opened between them was now filled, not with silence and suspicion, but with a renewed sense of trust and an unbreakable bond that no enemy, past or present, could ever hope to sever. With the shadow of Chitty finally banished and their trust restored, a profound peace settled over the Musa household. The period of quiet reflection and shared vulnerability had not broken them, but had instead forged an unbreakable bond. The family feud, while still simmering on the fringes, seemed to lose its power in the face of their newfound unity. Abubakar, now more devoted than ever, saw Amarachi not just as his wife, but as his true and equal partner. One morning, while the two of them were enjoying a rare, quiet breakfast together, Amarachi's hand instinctively went to her stomach. She smiled, a radiant, almost secretive smile that lit up her entire face. She looked at Abubakar, her eyes shining with a joyful secret. "Abubakar," she began, her voice soft with emotion. "I have some news." He looked at her, his brow furrowing in a gentle question. "Is everything all right, my love?" he asked, sensing the shift in her mood. She took his hand and placed it on her stomach, her heart thumping with anticipation. "We're going to be parents," she whispered, her voice filled with a mixture of joy and disbelief. For a moment, Abubakar said nothing. His mind, so often occupied with billions and boardrooms, went completely blank. Then, a slow, disbelieving smile spread across his face, a smile that reached his eyes and made them shine. He pulled her into a tight, joyful embrace, a soundless cheer of pure, unadulterated happiness. He lifted her off her feet and spun her around, a giddy, uncharacteristic display of emotion that filled the room with their shared joy. The news spread through the family like a warm, hopeful current. The joy was contagious. Even Fatima, in a rare moment of genuine warmth, sent a message congratulating them. It was a small but significant step towards reconciliation. The family, which had been so fractured by their relationship, was now united in its anticipation of a new generation. Abubakar's priorities shifted overnight. His focus, once solely on his empire, now centered on creating a safe and loving home for their child. He canceled meetings, delegated responsibilities, and even began reading books on fatherhood. He would spend hours talking to Amarachi's stomach, his deep voice a gentle, loving rumble, sharing stories of his life and his dreams for their future. Their home, which had been a quiet reflection of their love, was now filled with a new, vibrant energy, a sense of purpose and a future far greater than any business deal or real estate acquisition. Their love story, which began with a bouquet of red lilies, was now blossoming into the most beautiful chapter of all. The joy of their impending parenthood was a powerful, unifying force, but it was also a period of heightened anxiety, especially for Amarachi. While Abubakar saw his family's new unity as a blessing, Amarachi was acutely aware of the lingering tensions. Her pregnancy, a beacon of hope for their future, also felt like a fragile promise that could be easily broken. One afternoon, Amarachi, now well into her second trimester, was at home with her mother-in-law, a woman who, while civil, still maintained a certain distance. The conversation was strained, filled with polite but guarded questions about her health and the babies. Suddenly, a sharp, stabbing pain shot through Amarachi's abdomen. She gasped, clutching her stomach, her face paling. The pain was unlike anything she had ever felt, and a cold dread washed over her. Her mother-in-law, seeing her distress, immediately sprang into action. She moved with a speed and command that belied her age, calling for the driver and instructing the staff to prepare the car. The journey to the hospital was a blur of fear and frantic prayers. In the back of the car, her mother-in-law, for the first time, dropped her icy facade. She held Amarachi's hand, her touch surprisingly gentle, her eyes filled with genuine concern. "Everything will be all right, my dear," she murmured, a quiet comfort in the whirlwind of panic. "Just breathe." At the hospital, Abubakar, who had been alerted by his mother, arrived in a state of controlled panic. He burst into the emergency room, his face a mask of fear. Seeing Amarachi on the gurney, looking pale and fragile, his heart lurched. He took her hand, his touch firm and reassuring. "I'm here, my love," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. The hours that followed were an agonizing test of their strength and faith. The doctors ran a battery of tests, their faces revealing nothing. Abubakar and his mother sat together in the waiting room, a shared silence between them, their differences forgotten in the face of this potential tragedy. For the first time, Amarachi's mother-in-law saw her not as an interloper, but as the mother of her grandchild, a fragile part of their family tree. Finally, a doctor came out with a tired but reassuring smile. "The baby is fine," she announced. "It was just a false alarm, a small complication we often see. But the scare is a reminder to take things easy." A wave of relief so powerful it brought Abubakar to his knees washed over them. He rushed back to Amarachi, pulling her into a tight, tearful embrace. In that moment, surrounded by the sterile white walls of the hospital, their love was fortified. The scare had been a brutal reminder of the preciousness of the life they were creating, but it also brought a new level of trust and intimacy to their relationship. It had turned an adversarial family into a united front, proving that in the face of true hardship, love and family would always prevail. The pregnancy scare, though terrifying, had a silver lining. It had thawed the last vestiges of coldness in the family, uniting them in their love and concern for the unborn child. As the months passed, the once tense Musa family mansion was filled with a new kind of energy, one of excited anticipation. Abubakar, more protective than ever, doted on Amarachi, ensuring her every need was met. Even Fatima and Idris, now seeing the true depth of their brother's love and the quiet grace of his wife, offered genuine support and advice. One rainy Tuesday evening, Amarachi's labor began. It was a long and arduous process, and as the hours ticked by, a new kind of fear gripped Abubakar. He had commanded boardrooms and negotiated billionaire deals without a flicker of doubt, but watching Amarachi in pain, he felt utterly powerless. He stayed by her side, holding her hand, whispering words of encouragement, and praying with a fervor he hadn't felt in years. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the cries of a baby filled the delivery room. The doctor, a kind and smiling woman, held up a tiny, squirming bundle. "It's a girl," she announced, her voice full of joy. Amarachi, exhausted but radiant, looked at Abubakar, tears of happiness streaming down her face. But before they could fully process the moment, the doctor's voice came again, this time with a hint of surprise. "And there's another one." Abubakar's heart stopped. He hadn't just prayed for one child, he had been blessed with two. He rushed to Amarachi's side as the second baby, also a girl, was brought into the world. In the span of an hour, their family had doubled. They named them Ifeoma, meaning good thing, and Chioma, meaning good God. The twins were a perfect blend of both parents. Ifeoma had her father's determined gaze and a quiet confidence that was already visible in her tiny features. Chioma, on the other hand, had her mother's gentle smile and a peaceful, serene demeanor. Their arrival brought a new level of joy and purpose to Abubakar's life. His empire, once his sole focus, was now a distant second to the giggles and coos of his two beautiful daughters. He was no longer just a businessman. He was a father, and it was the most important title he had ever held. The two tiny bundles of joy were not just his children. They were living testaments to a love story that had defied all odds. The arrival of Ifeoma and Chioma transformed the Musa household, turning the once stately mansion into a symphony of giggles, coos, and the gentle patter of tiny feet. For Abubakar, the change was nothing short of a revolution. The man who had once measured his days in market trends and profit margins now measured them by his daughter's milestones. The first time Ifeoma wrapped her tiny hand around his finger, the first time Chioma's face broke into a full, gummy smile. His office hours became a strict, non-negotiable schedule, ending sharply at 6 p.m. so he could rush home. The briefcase was replaced by a diaper bag, and business reports were traded for brightly colored storybooks. He, a man accustomed to commanding an army of staff, now found himself utterly captivated by the simple, profound joy of fatherhood. He would spend hours just watching them sleep, marveling at their perfect, tiny features. Ifeoma's determined frown a mirror of his own, Chioma's serene expression a reflection of her mother's grace. Amarachi would often find him in the nursery, singing soft, off-key lullabies or making silly faces, a side of him the world would never see. The power of his love for them was a visceral, overwhelming emotion that humbled him. He, who had built an empire, now knew that his greatest treasure was not in his bank account but in the two little girls he held in his arms. One evening, as he was rocking a sleepy Chioma and watching Ifeoma play with Amarachi, he had a moment of profound clarity. He looked at the family he had built, a family that had started with a single genuine connection in a flower shop. He had once believed his purpose was to build an empire of wealth and influence. Now he knew that his true legacy was the laughter that filled his home, the love that radiated from his wife, and the two beautiful lives he was entrusted to protect and guide. The Grand Galleria was still a marvel of architecture and a testament to his ambition, but it was just a building. His real masterpiece was the beautiful, messy, and infinitely joyful life he was now living. The birth of Ifeoma and Chioma was a catalyst for change, a powerful force that began to heal the deepest wounds within the Musa family. For Fatima, the change was profound. Watching her brother, the formidable Alhaji Abubakar, transform into a doting, gentle father chipped away at the fortress of pride she had built around her heart. She saw not a man blinded by love, but a man made whole by it. One afternoon, she visited Amarachi, bringing with her an extravagant set of matching golden anklets for the twins. She found Amarachi in the nursery, singing a soft lullaby to her sleeping daughters. The scene was one of pure, unadulterated love, and something inside Fatima finally broke. She saw her brother's happiness and the quiet strength of the woman who had brought it into his life. Waiting until Amarachi had tucked the girls in, Fatima pulled her aside. The air was thick with a long-held tension, but for the first time, it was laced with a hint of vulnerability. Amarachi, she began, her voice unusually soft. I owe you an apology. For my words, my actions. For my heart. Amarachi, surprised by the sudden confession, simply listened. I was a fool, Fatima continued, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I saw you as a threat, as someone who would take my brother away from us. But I was wrong. You didn't take him away, you gave him back to us. You gave him a happiness I haven't seen in him since we were children. You gave him these beautiful girls. She gestured toward the twins' cribs. And for that I am truly grateful. Amarachi, moved by the sincerity of the apology, reached out and took Fatima's hand. Thank you, Fatima, she said, her voice thick with emotion. It means a lot. I never wanted to take him away from you. I just wanted to be a part of his life, a part of this family. That day marked the beginning of a true friendship. Fatima, once an antagonist, now became a mentor. She took Amarachi under her wing, guiding her through the intricacies of high society events and teaching her the ropes of running the family's charitable foundations. She discovered that Amarachi was not just a quiet florist but a woman of immense intelligence and unwavering integrity. She saw the same strength in Amarachi that she had always admired in her brother. The two women, once enemies, had finally found common ground in their shared love for Abubakar and his beautiful twin daughters. The family, which had been fractured by suspicion and pride, was finally truly whole. With the family united and the joy of their twin daughters filling their home, Amarachi's thoughts began to turn toward her own passions. The floral shop, though still a cherished memory, was a chapter she had moved past. She had discovered a new purpose, a new way to channel her creativity and her deep-seated desire to help others. During one of their newfound moments of shared confidence, Amarachi shared her idea with Abubakar. I want to do more than just give money to charity, she said. I want to create something that empowers people, something that gives them the same chance I was given. Her idea was a foundation that would provide seed funding, mentorship, and business training to young women in Lagos who had a passion for entrepreneurship but lacked the resources to start their own businesses. The vision was to create a new generation of female leaders, to turn their dreams into reality, just as her own dream had become real. Abubakar was immediately captivated by the idea. He saw in it a powerful reflection of Amarachi's own journey, a testament to her resilience and strength. "It's a brilliant idea," he said, his eyes gleaming with pride. "We'll call it the Amarachi Foundation." The foundation quickly became their joint project, a partnership that blended Abubakar's business acumen with Amarachi's empathetic vision. They built a team of experts, creating a rigorous application process that sought out not just good business plans, but strong character and a genuine drive to succeed. The foundation's inaugural event was a beautiful, intimate gala held in the Grand Galleria, the very place where their story had begun. Amarachi, now a confident public figure, spoke with a grace and passion that captivated the audience. She told her story of being a simple florist with a big dream and how a chance meeting had changed her life. She spoke of the importance of giving a chance to those who are often overlooked. The foundation's first cohort of young women entrepreneurs, all of whom had inspiring stories of their own, were introduced to the city's business elite. They weren't just given a handout, they were given a platform. The Amarachi Foundation became more than just a charity. It became a symbol. It was a testament to the fact that with a little bit of support and a lot of belief, anyone could rise to greatness. It was a beautiful, living legacy that proved their love was not just a fairy tale for them, but a force for good in the world. Their love story had begun in a flower shop, but its impact was now blooming all across the city. The success of the Amarachi Foundation did not go unnoticed. While it brought them public admiration and cemented Amarachi's place in society, it also drew the attention of a formidable new rival, Chief Emeka Obi. A ruthless and ambitious magnate in the construction industry, Chief Obi had a long-standing personal vendetta against Abubakar. Their rivalry stemmed from a fierce business dispute years ago, one which Abubakar had won decisively, leaving Obi with a deep-seated desire for revenge. Chief Obi saw the foundation not as a force for good, but as a new and vulnerable front in his war with Abubakar. He couldn't attack Abubakar's core business, as that would be a direct, messy war he wasn't sure he could win. But the foundation, a symbol of Abubakar's love for Amarachi and his public image, was a perfect target. He was a master of manipulation and knew how to weaponize perception. His attack was insidious and two-pronged. First, he began planting stories in lesser-known gossip blogs and social media pages. The narrative was simple and vicious. The Amarachi Foundation was a sham, a tax write-off disguised as charity. He accused them of nepotism, claiming that the grants were only given to friends of the Musa family, not to deserving young women. He even fabricated stories about funds being siphoned off to offshore accounts, a lie that was difficult to prove or disprove without a full audit. The second part of his plan was more personal. He started a smear campaign against Amarachi herself, reviving old, baseless rumors from the early days of their relationship. He paid off disreputable journalists to write articles with sensational headlines like "The Florist's Golden Handshake" and "Is the Amarachi Foundation a front for a secret past?" He even went so far as to subtly link Amarachi to the fraudulent claims about the foundation's finances, suggesting she was the mastermind behind the alleged scam. Abubakar, a seasoned warrior in the business world, was used to this kind of attack. He knew it was a direct hit against him, but it was aimed at his wife. He was furious and wanted to retaliate in a way that would crush Chief Obi once and for all. But Amarachi, calm and steady amidst the storm, had a different approach. She refused to let his tactics dictate their response. She knew that a messy, public fight would only validate Obi's lies and distract from the foundation's good work. A storm was brewing, threatening to unravel everything they had built. And this time, it was Amarachi who would lead the charge. The accusations hurled by Chief Obi were a direct assault on everything Amarachi had come to represent. The media, hungry for scandal, amplified the lies, and for the first time since their wedding day, Amarachi felt the biting sting of public judgment again. Abubakar, seeing her pain, was ready for war. He had his team of lawyers and PR experts poised for a full-scale counterattack. ready to unleash a barrage of data and evidence that would crush Chief Obi's campaign. But Amarachi, now a confident and self-assured woman, refused to let anger guide their response. She knew that a public mudslinging contest would only give Chief Obi the platform he craved. The foundation was about hope and empowerment, and she wouldn't let it become a tool for her rival's vengeance. "We are not going to fight his battle on his terms," she told a fuming Abubakar, her voice calm and steady. "He wants to prove that we're corrupt, that I'm a fraud. We will prove him wrong with the truth, not with a lawsuit." Her strategy was simple, elegant, and devastatingly effective. She called for an impromptu press conference, not in some grand ballroom, but at the foundation's headquarters, a modest office building where the young entrepreneurs worked. She stood at a podium with Abubakar by her side, a picture of unity and quiet defiance. She didn't start with a defense. Instead, she introduced the first cohort of women the foundation had helped. One by one, they came to the podium and spoke, their voices a testament to the foundation's impact. There was a young woman who had started a tech company, a seamstress who had turned her small business into a thriving fashion brand, and a young farmer who had revolutionized organic farming in her village. They spoke of the foundation's mentorship, the financial support, and the belief that Amarachi had instilled in them. They spoke of how the foundation had changed their lives for the better, not with money alone, but with opportunity and genuine care. When it was her turn to speak, Amarachi didn't address Chief Obi directly. She didn't need to. "The Amarachi Foundation is not a front for anything," she said, her voice ringing with authority. "It is a front for hope. It is a front for dreams. The women you have just heard from are our proof. Our legacy will not be defined by the lies of a bitter man, but by the successes of these courageous women." The press, initially skeptical, was captivated. The story shifted instantly. The headlines the next day were no longer about scandal, but about success. The public saw a loving couple, a genuine cause, and a group of inspiring women who were the real victims of Chief Obi's smear campaign. His attack had not only failed, but had inadvertently given the foundation a powerful new platform. As they left the press conference, Abubakar looked at Amarachi with a new kind of admiration. He had seen her strength on their wedding day and her resilience during the pregnancy scare, but today he had seen her as a true leader. She was not just the woman he loved. She was a queen in her own right, standing tall and fighting her battles with grace and dignity. The world had tried to break her, but she had only grown stronger, becoming a formidable partner who would always be by his side. Chief Obi's attack, so carefully plotted, had spectacularly backfired. The public sympathy and media attention galvanized by Amarachi's press conference brought a wave of new donors and applicants to the Amarachi Foundation. The negative publicity, once a threat, had become a powerful marketing tool. Faced with the undeniable success of the foundation and a public that had rallied behind the Musa family, Chief Obi retreated, his campaign of lies left to wither and die. With the threat vanquished, a profound peace settled over Abubakar and Amarachi's lives. The drama that had defined the early years of their relationship, the family feuds, the public scrutiny, the personal attacks, had finally subsided. The years that followed were marked by a quiet, settled happiness. Their love, no longer a subject of gossip, became a quiet, powerful force that sustained them. Their daughters, Ifeoma and Chioma, grew into bright and spirited young girls. Ifeoma, with her father's sharp mind and determined spirit, showed an early knack for numbers and a fierce sense of justice. Chioma, with her mother's gentle heart and artistic soul, spent hours in the family's garden, tending to the flowers with the same care and love Amarachi had once shown. The girls were the living embodiment of their parents' love story, a perfect blend of two different worlds that had become one. The Amarachi Foundation flourished under Amarachi's leadership. It expanded its reach, empowering hundreds of young women across Nigeria. Amarachi, no longer just a figurehead, had become a true leader, her quiet strength and unwavering integrity earning her the respect of the business community and the love of the women she mentored. She and Abubakar, a formidable partnership in both business and life, would often sit in their garden in the evenings, watching their daughters play and talking about the day's events. They had built not just a family, but a legacy of love, integrity, and empowerment. The past was no longer a source of pain, but a testament to how far they had come. Years turned into decades. The Grand Galleria, the place where their story had begun, still stood as a monument to Abubakar's ambition, but now it was also a symbol of something far greater, a legacy of love. Abubakar, his hair now a distinguished silver, and Amarachi, her face etched with the beautiful lines of a life well lived, would often sit on the balcony of their Lagos home, watching the sun set over the city they had conquered together. Their daughters, Ifeoma and Chioma, had grown into remarkable women. Ifeoma, a brilliant and driven businesswoman, was a force to be reckoned with, managing a large part of the family's technology empire with the same sharp mind and determined spirit as her father. Chioma, a successful artist and a passionate advocate for environmental causes, ran the Amarachi Foundation, expanding its reach to empower women in rural communities across the country. The girls were not just a continuation of their parents' legacy. They were a beautiful evolution of it. On their 40th wedding anniversary, the family gathered for a quiet celebration. It was a stark contrast to the dramatic wedding day all those years ago. As Abubakar looked at his wife, surrounded by their children and grandchildren, his heart was full. He took her hand, his touch still as gentle as it had been on their first date by the lagoon. "I still remember the day I saw you," he said, his voice a soft rumble. "You were arranging red lilies, completely lost in your world. I was a man who had everything, but in that moment, I realized I had nothing." Amarachi smiled, her eyes, still sparkling with the same light that had first captivated him, filled with love. "And I was a girl who had a flower shop and a dream," she replied. "You taught me that a dream isn't just about what you can create, but about who you create it with." Their story was no longer just a private one. It had become a legend. It was a tale of a Nigerian billionaire who had found love in the most unexpected place, with the most unlikely person. It was a story of two different worlds that had not just coexisted, but had merged to create something even more beautiful. Their love was a testament to the fact that with trust, resilience, and unwavering devotion, a simple beginning could blossom into a forever after, a legacy that would continue to bloom for generations to come.